Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Peanut Gallery podcast. I'm your host, Jesse, and I'm joined by Nico and Pat. Make sure to follow our socials at Peanut Gallery HQ on Insta and Twitter. You can find the video version of this podcast on our website, peanutgalleryhq.com, and at our YouTube, The Peanut Gallery. So welcome back, boys. It's been an interesting week in sports. The NBA and MLB have returned. Some other crazy stuff has happened too. How have your guys' last week been?
Yeah, so I was thrown right back into the mix with the Mets. I mean, we had the Braves down to their last strike in the second game of the series, and then Ozuna had to hit that home run. So I'm kind of happy that I was heartbroken for the first time in a while. I can finally invest my emotions into something instead of just being a robotic mute for a couple months.
And as a Yankee fan, I'm pretty frustrated with you can't blame it on the Marlins necessarily, but pretty frustrated with that whole situation. We're missing games right now. I got the hat on. I wish I could be watching some Yankee baseball, but hopefully that resolves itself as quickly as possible.
Well, that is an actually awesome segue into our first section. As you guys know, in the last week, there has been a COVID outbreak among the Marlins clubhouse. At least 17 COVID cases on the team following a night out. So I just wanted to ask you guys what you think this means for baseball, and if the season is canceled, which team do you think will feel most hard done by this development? So Nico, I'll open it up to you first.
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly challenging thing for baseball to cope with. I think compared to the NBA, which is handling its whole season in a bubble with smaller rosters, baseball was trying to show the world that you can have a semblance of like your regular life traveling around from stadium to stadium, but it's already proven first weekend that that's just incredibly challenging. So it's going to be tough for the MLB to cope with.
Yeah, I think the team that if this season never really ends, I think the team that's gonna feel the most negative energy from it is probably gonna be the Dodgers, just because they've been knocking on the door for so many years, and it looks like this year they have what it takes to get over the hump. They clearly have more talent than the Astros, who they were struggling to get by for a couple of years. And then I think the Yankees are right up with them, but I think the Dodgers definitely feel it the hardest.
I think another team that is probably pretty frustrated would be the Tampa Bay Rays, which this year I think is like a sleeper team for me. They just have like an outstanding starting rotation with Glasnow, Blake Snell, and Charlie Morton heading that rotation, a really strong bullpen. And I think that was another team that they've got some expiring like rookie contracts, or they have to re-sign some guys. They're a small market team, so this was a year that they were really going to try to push. But knock on wood, season will get back on track, and we won't have to deal with all the finality. But if so, I think, the Dodgers for sure, Yankees, Rays, those are the big three for me.
And might I just throw in, and it pains me to say this, but the Phillies have invested a lot in getting some tools into their team, and they're probably hoping to get better value. And if the season is voided, it's going to be an overall loss for them as well. Well, some other news. This is a big one. The team formerly known as the Redskins has decided to make a change, and they will be known henceforth as the Washington Football Team. I want to hear what your guys' thoughts on that were. I know my initial reaction was a little confused, I would say, at first, but I'd love to open the floor to you guys, see what you think.
Let you start us off, Pat.
All right, yeah. Well, I was on Twitter, and I saw that the Washington Football Team, or whatever the fuck we're supposed to call them now, they're in some Twitter beef with LeBron, because LeBron said they had such a long meeting, and the outcome of their meeting was, we're going to be the Washington Football Team now. And then they clapped back at him and said, your son is literally named LeBron James Jr. But yeah, I think they should focus on getting a better product on the field instead of upping their Twitter game. So yeah, fuck the Redskins.
Another case of just Dan Snyder, just complete ineptitude. Dude can't do anything. He can't even rename his team, let alone put together a roster. Come on now.
I think it is a little bit of a missed opportunity. If they were going to go with the Washington, I think they could have gone with the Washington Football Club. I think that would have been kind of funny and like a cool, like, partnering to the European soccer teams. I think Washington FC could have been an interesting inclusion.
Oh, man. I think they would have been absolutely just murdered by just everyone else. Like,
all global soccer fans would have just roasted the game.
As they do already. Well, some more NFL news. This was another big one. Jamal Adams to the Seahawks. The Jets received 2 first-round picks and Bradley McDougald, as well as a third-round pick in later years. I thought this is like a good deal for both teams, in my opinion, because the Jets got like 3 great years out of a great player, but they need to reload. They're not in win now mode, not even close. And I think it could be a mutually beneficial deal, but I want to hear what Nico has to say about it first.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Last year, Seahawks were 22nd in points allowed, so they're just going to be able to plug in an impact guy. And a lot of that was on the defensive line, but when you get a guy as talented as Jamal Adams, you can plug him at safety, corner, linebacker, dude's an animal. And I think also, from what I heard or what I've read, is that the Niners and the Cowboys were also heavily pursuing Jamal Adams. So those are 2 like NFC competitors, especially the Niners within their own division. So being able to get that weapon away from perhaps like your biggest competition in the NFC is a pretty cool thing. And I think also, the Jets, Jamal Adams didn't want to be there. I mean, can't really work with a guy who is that just pissed off in his situation. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the Jets were put in a tough spot, and they dealt with it in a great way, getting 2 first-rounders and also swapping a fourth for a third. I think the Seahawks are going to be probably the second biggest contender. I mean, the NFC West is just ridiculous, but the Seahawks were clearly – they beat the Niners once in the regular season, then they lost on the final play of the game the second time. And I think if they played at home against the Packers in the NFC divisional game, they definitely could have won that game. Russell Wilson's the best player in the NFC in my eyes, and I think they still have KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner in the middle. So this defense is – and they signed Bruce Irvin. So this defense is looking like they could have the pieces for a playoff push.
I think another interesting note to add is that with everything up in the air due to Corona, like what's going to happen with the college football season, that could make like a 2021 first round pick, like potentially less valuable because you'll be losing a lot of tape on the guys who would be going into the draft that year. And plus that's a pretty like late first round pick. And obviously in football, more than honestly any other sport, like picks are like the life and blood of an organization. But I mean, it's a up in the air versus like a proven commodity. So I think it was a great trade for the Seahawks.
And also, I wanted to point out that Josh Gordon has been posting a lot on social media about being in the area in Seattle, and he's pushing for that reinstatement. Even though he's been caught with weed in his system like 22 times now, he might get back in the league. If he gets back in the league, you're gonna have DK, Tyler Lockett, and Josh Gordon, and I don't want to face that.
He's competing with a former teammate, albeit a little brief, Antonio Brown, who's looking to get back in the league. He retired and now he's back. So we'll have to see how that plays out. And our final piece of news before we get into our segments is the Lou Williams news. And when I saw this, I had to reread the headline because it was pretty astonishing. Lou Williams broke the COVID protocol in the bubble, went out, ended up going to a strip club with Jack Harlow, of all people. And I was disappointed, to say the least. And but I do want to hear your guys' thoughts on that and the ramifications. And also, do you think the NBA needs to be a little bit more heavy-handed in their like repercussions for something like that? So Pat, what do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, I didn't know until Nico told me a little bit ago that he was originally going for his Nico, you said a grandfather's friend's funeral?
Yeah, friend's grandfather. That's okay. Like to best of my knowledge, that's what I heard, yeah.
Yeah, so if the NBA is excusing people, I mean, obviously with funerals, like you should be there, but if they were gonna let Lou Williams back in, if he hadn't gone to the strip club and just going to that funeral, I think that if they're gonna keep allowing like excused absences, then that's gonna there could be an outbreak, and I think they have to be as strict as possible. But I hope the wings were worth it, honestly, for him. But but yeah, I think getting some Clippers bench players a couple more minutes is only gonna help. He's only gonna miss like 2 or 3 games, but he might be lacking in conditioning when he gets back on the court.
Yeah, I think I would just say that. I mean, from a guy who's a vet, that was a rookie move if I've ever seen one. Zion, he left, he handled his business, he was quiet, came back, followed protocol, did it with class, did what he had to do, and then Lou Will broke it for some shit. Yeah, just rookie move. Yeah, I agree with Pat. It's not going to seriously impact like the Clippers' title hopes in any way, but I mean, potentially in the locker room, it could show that, hey, this is a guy, he may not be as like committed to winning a championship as the rest of the players there if he's gonna potentially like screw up a bit of their getting back into it just for some wings. So yeah,
and
rookie move.
Sources close to the peanut gallery are telling us that James Harden is outraged by the news. He wanted to be invited to the strip club. Unfortunately, he wasn't. I think he's going to carry that with a chip on his shoulder throughout the rest of the
Yeah, Lou Williams is reminding us that they're all rookies in the bubble, or they're all rookies to the bubble.
Indeed.
Well, we're going to head into segment 1 of the debate section. So I was watching a recent exhibition game. It was the Sixers, and I saw before my eyes Ben Simmons drain a 3, and I was like, oh no, we're in trouble now. So I started thinking about which player, if their missing piece was like completed, could be one of the best players in the league. So Pat, I'm curious with your thoughts on this. Who do you think could be one of the best players in the league if they fixed one small part of their game?
Yeah, so I had a pretty oddball answer with Frank Ntilikina as my UFC fighter of choice last time, but I'm gonna stay away from him. There's some players where you could give them all the tools and they just don't have it. They don't have the drive. But I do know a guy who has the drive, and all he needs is a lot of speed, and he could be a top 15 player in the league, and that is Taco Fall.
Wow.
All right, fact or fiction? Fact or fiction? Okay. I have dapped up Taco Fall. Fact or fiction?
Fact.
Fact. Yep. Audience, I have all the credibility in the world because I dapped up Taco Fall. If he has that, he definitely has the drive. Him and whoever the coach's son was on UCF, they were single-handedly keeping that team in it against Zion and RJ Barrett against Duke in the March Madness. And I think if you have that mindset, and he's such a humble guy off the court, you got to feed him all the gifts of the world. He's just a man that deserves everything. If you get his feet churning on that treadmill, then he could be a force. We didn't. Yao Ming was a stiff, but he still contributed a lot because he was 7'6". So I think if you give Taco Fall that speed, then who's stopping him? Boban? Boban? Nah.
Yo, don't sleep on Boban, bro. Come on now. But the player I went with is a guy who I mildly slandered last week, so I'm kind of going back a little bit. I had to take another look. I watched a couple of highlights between the episodes, but I'm going to be going with Markelle Fultz, the guy who I claimed partially in anger, not completely with reason, was the biggest bust of all time. That was just –
Don't be too polite. I don't know if he'll hear the podcast. You don't have to be polite.
All right, but – looking at it this year, the one tool I would give him would be obviously a jump shot. It's coming. He's shooting. Obviously, it's horrendously. I think it's like 15% from the 3 this season, but he's working it into his game. But he has been an impact playmaker off the bench and sometimes in a starting spot for the Magic. He was the number 1 pick for a reason. He's got incredible athleticism. Over his last 10 before the suspension of the season, he was averaging almost 7 assists a game. Over 50% from the field, 13 points a game. He's a strong defender who can defend the 1 and 2 and even onto smaller threes. I think yeah, you're not you won't be the number one pick for no reason. And he clearly has like the athletic frame. He's got a long wingspan, Frank Ntilikina vibes. So I think if you give him a jump shot and the confidence to start taking those shots, he could be maybe not one of the best players in the league, but definitely a strong starting option for a team.
I have a cheesy kind of one, but think if Michael Porter Jr. had a stronger back. But in all seriousness, I think like someone like Pat Beverly, if they had some playmaking ability at all, I mean, he has the dog in him. It's just
does have the dog.
Oh, by the way, Lou Williams' dog status in my book has been revoked after the wing incident. So, Lou, I'm sorry, you're not a dog anymore.
He's not going to hear the end of that one. That's tough.
Well, moving on, but staying in the NBA, there is no doubt that the NBA world is shook by the entrance of Bol Bol. And he's been putting on a show. He really has. And his skill set seems a lot better than the people that were drafted around him. So I want to ask you, Nico, do you think that this Nuggets big man lineup is the real deal?
I think that's really hard to say because we've never seen anything like it. But I think this group of players, out of any group in the league, is like the five to make it work. I looked up some stats, and Jeremy Grant, he's a 40% three-point shooter this season. Millsap's 44% three-point shooter, so that's some spacing on the floor. We've seen Bol block and then pull up from three right down the court. Jokic is obviously perhaps one of the best passing bigs in the history of the league. And to polish that off, Mason Plumlee, after screwing around at Duke for 15 years with Coach K, he's kind of a vet now. He's 30 years old, which absolutely baffled me. But he's actually a proficient passer out of the low post and on the block. So they can space the floor. They can shoot it a bit. And I'm just praying for a Rockets-Nuggets series in the postseason. That would be absolutely incredible to see those two lineups going at it. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, I think if you're in the West and you're not the Lakers or Clippers, experiment with whatever you want. The Rockets have been doing it all season. The past 2 seasons, just chucking up as many threes as possible. And then maybe they'll be ready if they meet the Lakers and Clippers and they get hot for 4 games or something. I don't know. But if the Nuggets, they could fuck with whatever they want to have a chance to beat one of the LA teams. I don't think it's going to happen, but I love Paul Millsap. I think that's a guy that can stretch out a team. He could just wait in the corner, just pop it. You know, if I had better 3-point shooting ability, then that would be my NBA comparison, but I can't shoot for shit. So I'm more of a – people usually just say, like, I don't know, TJ McConnell because he's just a scrapper.
Well, I mentioned his name earlier, but Michael Porter Jr. had a really strong game coming back. And he's a guy that has it all. I mean, he's got the entire skill set of an NBA star. I was very disappointed that the Knicks didn't spend a pick on him or trade back to get him. But we'll see. I think that the Nuggets – I think the West is actually a little bit more open than people think it is or give it credit for. I think you've got some serious contenders in there. And while the LA teams are the clear front runners, I think there are some teams that could shock some people. Rockets and Nuggets being 2 of those wild cards.
Yeah, and then the Blazers. Blazers are lurking for that 8 spot. They're going to have to win a lot of games to get there, but they're lurking.
Well, we are shifting to the world of boxing after some crazy news emerged last week. Mike Tyson will be back in an 8-round exhibition against Roy Jones Jr. Tyson's career record was 50-6, while Jones Jr. boasts a 66-9 record. And if a 54-year-old legend fighting a 51-year-old legend wasn't enough for you, a 3-time slam dunk champion in Nate Robinson is taking on YouTube sensation Jake Paul in the undercard. It's going to be This is the most 2020 headline that I think I've ever heard. So, Pat, I want to hear your thoughts. Just guys talking here. We're no boxing experts, but I just want to hear your thoughts on what you think is going to go down.
Was Jake Paul – was it Logan Paul did he fight KSI?
Yeah, it's Logan.
Yeah. So does Jake Paul have any experience?
He fought KSI's brother.
Oh yeah. So I mean, if it's a pro athlete, I'm taking the pro athlete. No matter how small he is. I mean, Nate Robinson. I will give him his dog status. He deserves that dog status. He's just gonna stay low. He's gonna stay low. Attack the abs. Attack the abs. Jake Paul's slowly gonna crumble over, and then he's gonna go with the 1-2 Mayweather. Yep, right around the top. Roy Jones Jr. He's got a train coming for his forehead. That's a death wish, getting in the ring with Mike Tyson, no matter what age he is. If I had the choice to take a Mike Tyson punch to the face or Joey Chestnut throwing up all 75 of his hot dogs that he ate onto my face, I'd definitely take the Joey Chestnut option. That's kind of an easy choice, but I'll let you guys give your input on that one.
I guess I'm taking the Joey Chestnut as well, but in terms of the Nate Robinson, Jake Paul undercard, I'm hoping for just Nate Robinson just to knock the last 2 brain cells just out of Jake Paul in that fight. That's just what I'm hoping for. And in terms of the mildly, I guess, just by inches more serious fight between Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson, I think that could actually be, even though it's an exhibition match, it could be a pretty decent fight. Everyone knows Mike Tyson's, but Roy Jones Jr., he's fought as recently as 2018. He's fought in so many weight classes. He's a really talented fighter versus Tyson, who fought back in his last fight was 2005. So Jones Jr. is probably in better fighting shape versus Mike Tyson. He's just been beating up on dudes in his compound wherever he lives. But I've just seen too many videos of Mike Tyson just looking like an absolute maniac that it's hard to bet against that guy. He seems possessed when he's in the ring.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting one, and who's to say who's going to come out on top. I know I'm putting my stock, at least for the undercard, my boy Nate Robinson, the pride of the New York City Knicks. He's been the only shining light besides Linsanity.
Yeah, I was about to say Linsanity.
We had Porzingis for a couple months, and then we had to feed him to the wolves.
You got Frank Ntilikina too. Come on now.
Oh yeah, that was our guy. That was our guy, and didn't work out.
Well, we're gonna move on. And I saw something pretty crazy on IG Live about a week ago. Chiefs receiver Tyreek Hill said that he thinks the Chiefs can win 7 Super Bowls when all is said and done. Is he getting ahead of himself, Nico?
Yeah, I mean, I think he is absolutely getting ahead of himself on this one. I think, or at least in the major American sports, the NFL is easily the hardest league to be dynastic in. There's only been 13 teams to go to back-to-back Super Bowls, and only 7 of those ever repeated. If you're looking at even Brady and the Patriots, that's just one of the crazy exceptions, and that's 6 Super Bowls over 20 seasons, if I'm correct. And Mahomes is clearly the best player in the league right now. He's incredible, but he's going to be taking up a lot of salary cap. They have a lot of other guys to pay. It's just tough to convince yourself that you're going to be winning 7 Super Bowls. I'd say cautiously, I would say 2 to 3 more over Mahomes' reign in Kansas City. If I'm a Chiefs fan, I'm optimistic. I'd maybe push that to 4 or 5, but that's stretching it. I don't know. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I don't – dynasties like the Patriots are one of a kind when it comes to that. And Andy Reid has made it clear he wants to ride the Patrick Mahomes train as long as he can. He's 62, but maybe he could be there for Mahomes' entire career if he's healthy enough to be on the sideline in his late 70s. Eric Bieniemy has called a lot of plays for the Chiefs in the last couple of years, but I think he'll have a head coaching job in the next couple of years, so he won't still be on the staff. I think as long as Reid's there, they'll definitely be a contender, but pieces are always changing on defense that I think 7 is kind of ridiculous, and players are going to want more money in a couple of years, and it never works. I don't know. The Patriots are that just makes it more absurd. I mean, we're going to look back on Patrick Mahomes, and he's gonna be the more talented player than Tom Brady, but the Patriots system is just built different.
And, Kelsey's getting up there in age. And we're not even sure if they're going to be able to pay Tyreek when his contract is up. He's going to be I already think he's among the top 5 receivers in the league right now. And if he continues to trend up, he's going to want some serious receiver money when he gets paid. And I don't know. I just think it's putting the cart before the horse a little bit.
I would say sorry.
No, what were you saying?
I would say one thing, though, is that Tyreek included, so many guys have just talked about how much they love playing with Patrick Mahomes. So maybe it could be a bit of like the LeBron effect, where kind of vets who want to win a championship, they'll take a bit of a pay cut to play there. Or maybe Tyreek, I don't know. I don't know how big his ego is or how much he wants the guap, but maybe he could take a slight pay cut to stay there. So that's just another factor.
Or maybe the LeBron effect brings LeBron to Kansas City so that he could replace Travis Kelce when he's in his mid-40s. That's a potential thing. And then Bronny's going to do the same in 15 years. Who knows? It could. And then Bryce, and then the girl. It could be a James reunion in Kansas City for the next 20 years. Who knows?
Well, another guy they're grooming that I'm actually really high on fantasy football-wise is Mecole Hardman, who I actually think could be one of the best receivers in football in the next 5 years. I've seen him play a lot, and he's a sneaky good route runner, and he has all the speed in the world. So I think he could carry on Tyreek's legacy when the time comes. But moving on to our crazy sports take section, it's our fans' favorite. And we're getting into this one. There was a huge debate going on around NBA Twitter only yesterday after some footage of 57-year-old Michael Jordan still dominating on the court. It was some old footage, but it resurfaced. So the debate centered around whether today's MJ could beat Jared Dudley. Yes, you heard me right. Jared Dudley in a 1v1. So, Pat, I got to hear your thoughts. Do you think it's possible that MJ would beat Jared Dudley in a 1v1?
It's possible, but it's not going to happen. MJ was pulling these fadeaways on just some random guy who was at whatever nice resort he was at. He looked like he was the guy who was guarding him was 6'1". Jared Dudley's 6'7". If Jared Dudley's getting any court time with these athletes in the league today, then he's a great athlete and people don't give him any respect. But yeah, I think I'm gonna have to take Dudley, and it's not really close for me.
I think the craziest thing is that people act like Jared Dudley's the worst player in the NBA. The dude, I mean, he's not a starting guy. He may not even be, even on the Lakers as great as they are, he's not even like a steady rotational piece, but the guy's no slouch. I mean, firsthand experience, I went to a Sixers-Nets playoff series last year in Brooklyn, and that was the game that Dudley got everyone riled up, hit a couple big threes. He brings the scrap. The guy's no slouch. He can play basketball. He's in the NBA for a reason, on a championship team, gets some key minutes now and again. I mean, honestly, there's no shot he's beating Jared Dudley unless there's no shot. No way.
No, I'm going to blame you on this. I'm going to blame you because the Sixers fans are, well, just Philly sports fans in general. I know you're not all Philly. They are the loudest in all of sports on social media. And so their hate for Jared Dudley transcends reason here. I think it's just ridiculous that they're even considering that Dudley would lose. I'm with you guys. It's just ridiculous. A crazy take for sure. Well, moving on to our final segment, it's the lightning round, and we're doing a section of buy or sell. So in this section, you magically become the owner of this franchise, and you inherit the value of the team. And I want to know if you guys, in a short bit, 30 seconds or so, would hold on to it or sell it. So I'm going to start. Nico can go first. The Washington football team.
All right, this is a tough one. So I'm the owner, so Dan Snyder, he's out, right?
He's out.
All right, so I mean that's kind of been the crux of the organization for years. So I'd like to think I'm a fairly prudent guy. They got some young pieces. They got Chase Young. Dwayne Haskins, he's barely played in the NFL. He showed a lot of talent at Ohio State. I guess, is their stock on the rise? I don't know, but if I'm selling, I'm hesitant to do so. I think they've got a pretty passionate fan base that has stuck with them through a lot of shit. Matthew Berry, prime example, fantasy football guy. So I'm going to cautiously sell, but it's not an easy sell.
Pat, what do you think?
I got the same one. I mean, I don't think the Redskins – I think Dan Snyder has put a huge blemish on the franchise, and once you get him out of there, then it allows for so much more freedom for the where the team could go. I'm definitely buying the Redskins. It would be tough to – I mean, in this hypothetical world, I guess I'd have to root against the Giants. I'd never do that in real life, but they got your guy Antonio Gibson. They got Darius guys too, so that could be a nice two-headed monster in the backfield. Terry McLaurin's on the rise. They got some weird-ass motherfuckers in the wide receiver room besides him.
Stevenson's next AD.
Yeah, I can't name a guy on the defense. So yeah, I mean, I'm still gonna buy because their stock can't really get any worse.
Dirt cheap. Well, moving on. We'll start with you, Pat. The Phoenix Suns, buy or sell?
Phoenix Suns. I mean, there's a lot of hope for the franchise, but when you think about like all these tropical areas, there's not really like a huge constant in like the fan base. Like the Tampa Bay Rays, like Tampa Bay is like there's such a huge group of people who live in New York in like the summertime and then go down to Tampa Bay for the winter, so their fan base isn't really too strong. I think that applies for the Suns. Because there's so much hope with Booker and Ayton, I'd probably sell before. I mean, the West is going to be tough for forever. I mean, at least for the foreseeable future. So I'd sell while there's hope and while there's youth before it's clear that they can't really get over the top in the West. Kind of like what we're seeing like with the Blazers now. Like the Blazers have been lurking for so long. Like when they had Batum and Aldridge, they never could really get over the hump. But they had that hope like 7 years ago with a young Lillard, young McCollum. But yeah, I think I'd sell the Suns.
I think I'm in the same boat as Pat. It's tough. I mean, Devin Booker is one of the best young scorers in the league, and he's inked for a contract there for a long time. Ayton, even though he's been on and off the court, shows a lot of talent. Mikal Bridges today had a really fantastic game. I mean, they've been so terrible. They have a lot of young prospects. Kelly Oubre, Dwight Howard, avert your eyes. He's a good player. They're going to have a high pick next season. But I mean, the same was true with Charles Barkley. They got to a championship, but they could never win that championship, never could get over the hump. And D-Book has kind of already expressed his kind of frustrations. He wants to be with Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell. He was pretty frustrated. He couldn't get either of those guys there. We'll see if he kind of pulls the "let me out of here, I want to leave" card. But I don't know. It's just a franchise that's constantly not been able to get over the top. So I'm going to have to be selling as well.
Yeah, I think it's tough because if they just got one more player in that backcourt that could really help out, I think they could be good, you know? They haven't found that right backcourt partnership for Booker.
I would say, though, don't sleep on Ricky Rubio. My roommate and I are huge Ricky Rubio fans. He's one of the top guys in the league. He's kind of fallen off. He's a little bit older, but don't sleep on Ricky Rubio. That's all I'll say.
Okay, I'll make sure not to. Okay, moving back to the NFL, we'll start with you, Nico. The LA Rams.
Coach and quarterback is the two most important things for a winning culture and a winning franchise. Sean McVay, he's arguably the best young coach in the league. Obviously, he had a really tough card dealt to him this season with a lot of high-profile guys coming in, losing draft picks, and it kind of made made the situation look worse than, or it didn't completely fall on him. Gurley was kind of a mess. And I think Goff, he's not the best. He's not going to be one of the best quarterbacks of all time, but he works in McVay's system. They went to a Super Bowl. They're the team in LA. Chargers 6 fans are probably shaking their heads at me, but I'm not too worried about that. They got a gorgeous new stadium, going to pull a lot of people to go there. It's going to be an event for all the Los Angeles. I think that's the word, but yeah, I'm buying. I'm going to hold on to my ownership of the LA Rams. I'm buying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what – I can't really get a feel for what the stock on the Rams would be, but I don't want to be in the same division as Nick Bosa for 15 years. Russell Wilson still is going to be like contending for a playoff spot every year for the next 8 to 10 years. And then Kyler Murray is there, and they just added D-Hop. So, I mean, I don't really want to have stock on the Rams. If I don't want to have a stock in a certain team in the NFC West, it would probably be the Rams. So I'd have to sell.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, they're in cap hell right now. Absolute hell. They put all their chips on winning that one year, and they're kind of stuck. They're kind of stuck with the guys that they've got right now. And the only way they're really going to improve is through cheap draft picks, So I think I'd be selling, if I'm going to be honest. But moving on to baseball, the Philadelphia Phillies. Pat, you want to get us started?
I mean, I don't know. They got a lot of old guys. I mean, Didi's in his prime, but Andrew McCutchen, I mean, Bryce Harper isn't given what they paid him for, but I mean, Segura is a nice piece to have, and JT Realmuto really stepped up his game last year. But this is again, it's about the division. The Braves are going to be good for at least the next 5 years. And then you got the Nationals, who still have Patrick Corbin. They still – is Strasburg hurt? I don't even know. Scherzer's getting up there in age, but you also got Juan Soto. Yeah, I'm not going to support the Phillies in any way, even in a hypothetical world. So I'm gonna sell.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be selling stock too. I think that – I mean, they have Harper, who's still 26. Rhys Hoskins, he had a great rookie year. Didi's solid. Realmuto's arguably the best catcher in the game. And they have Nola at the front of the rotation, but
yeah, that rotation
I think
is lacking.
Pat's point about being in the same division as the Braves, who I think are going to be one of like the premier teams in baseball for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I didn't even mention my Mets too. I didn't even mention
but
but their pitching is just going to slowly deteriorate, so that's why I didn't really want to touch that.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it's kind of the same thing as Pat brought up with the Rams. It's just a tough division to be in. They got same deal. They got a passionate fan base. They got a nice stadium, Citizens Bank, gone to many a game there, but I don't know. I don't see them being able to get over the hump, and they have so much money locked up in Harper, and they're going to have to pay Nola because pitchers demand a lot of money, so I'm selling.
Yeah, I'm selling. I can't be associated with the city of Philadelphia. Hate that city. And the Mets are lurking. I'm sorry, but they're lurking.
Yeah, Jesse, how do you feel about the pitching? Like, are we gonna support DeGrom? I mean, Syndergaard is gonna be a wild card for the next couple of years. Stroman's getting up there in age. I mean, I love Mats, and we could have Michael Wacha on his return.
Wacha's dog food, bro. Come on now.
Wacha revenge tour. You should have seen his change-up against the Red Sox last night.
I'll tell you what. All right, our rotation is a little banged up right now, but if we move Seth Lugo into the starting rotation, he will be one of the best pitchers in baseball. He's already one of the best relievers in baseball.
But our bullpen will be absolute shit.
Yes. Oh my God, I could not handle a Jerry's Familia guy.
He's gonna be our second best pitcher in the bullpen if we move Lugo into the starting lineup.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's feasible, but Lugo could be one. Like, I think Lugo DeGrom is like a very strong and Stroman. Like, the Mets are lurking, and they're putting together the pieces. Like Cespedes is finally like he's looking pretty decent. Like,
he'll be back on the DL in a week.
As long as he's not attacked by a wild boar, I think he'll be okay.
Ahmed Rosario, don't sleep on him. He's been hitting real well to start the season.
Yeah. Polar Bear hit a nuke last night.
Oh, yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. Okay, well, for the last team, this could be a controversial one. Don't know. Buy or sell. I'm going to start with Nico. The San Antonio Spurs.
Ooh. It's a name I have not heard too much of this season. They've been pretty just under the radar. DeJounte Murray's a great young player, but Pop's getting up there in age. DeMar DeRozan, he's all right, but that's kind of a nowhere star to lead your team. He's king mid-range, but it's not MJ's era anymore, so that doesn't really fly. But I don't know. Once Popovich leaves, I mean, what's going to attract you to San Antonio? I mean, there's not a ton of – like, if I'm a free agent, I'm one of the premier players – unless I'm truly just chasing a bag, I'm not going to be choosing San Antonio over cities like New York, Miami, Chicago, LA, San Francisco for Golden State. I don't know. I'm gonna definitely be selling on that. They have such a winning culture that it may sound a bit foolish to say that, but how old is Pop's? Got to be 70 at this point. So he only has a few years left. He's already grooming his next head coach. Maybe you got some Timmy D coming up next with Timmy D with the dreads. That could be a nice sight to see. But
still waiting for the Popovich presidential run. I don't know if it's going to happen.
Could have used him this year.
Yeah, they have a really weird collection for their roster. It's just a bunch of older guys like Aldrich and Rudy Gay who are past their prime, and Patty Mills, who's – I mean, yeah, I love him, but he's going to be out of the league in 3 years. And then there's a bunch of young, pretty much unproven guys like DeJounte Murray and Derek White, and DeMar DeRozan is the only one pretty much in the middle who's in his prime. And that experiment with him being the best or second best player on the team didn't really work in Toronto. Just got smacked and bitched around by LeBron for 5+ years. I mean, they do have a winning culture in San Antonio, which is underrated. But I think the stock's low on them right now just because they haven't really done much, and their stock would be hurt by the West's strength. So I guess I'd buy just because they do have a loyal fan base that's used to winning, and I think that helps with pushing the team, and like just in the locker room. I think even after Popovich leaves, they're going to be used to that winning culture after Timmy D, David Robinson, Manu, all those guys. So I think while the team isn't great, I think it would be a nice time to buy into a very passionate fan base.
Yeah,
happy birthday, Manu.
Sorry, what did you say, Nico?
I said happy birthday, Manu. Pat brought him up. 43rd birthday, Manu. Euro step.
Well, I'm gonna stay with you, Pat. I think this would be a Warren Buffett kind of blue chip stock. It's a winner. Like the Spurs are just a good franchise, and they might struggle for a little bit, but they're built right from the ground up. And I think when Pop is gone, his mentor or whoever he's been mentoring is going to take the place. I know there's a woman, I forget her name, but she could be the first female head coach in the NBA. And Pop must think very highly of her. And I think that like you buy winning franchises. I would rather have the Spurs in their current state than the Knicks. And I know the Knicks are a much bigger market, but I would rather have the team that has their shit together, you know?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the Popovich coaching tree right now to show that they are built from the ground up. Their assistant coaches are just drawing from a great mind. You got Mike Brown, Doc Rivers, Mike Budenholzer, and then Sam Presti, who's done a great job in OKC in his time there. So he's definitely got a valuable mind, and even after he's gone, the franchise will still feel his impact.
It's like a comp. I would just say a quick comp for the Spurs. They're kind of like the St. Louis Cardinals of basketball. It's just a blue chip team, good franchise. I can definitely see that point. Great stuff, Jesse, Pat.
Yeah, no, you're right, Nico. But I guess we'll have to see how they progress over the next few years. It has been an awesome episode 2 of the Peanut Gallery podcast. Pat with his episode lead dab. But yeah, I just want to thank you guys for being here. Any last thoughts before we sign off?
I'm excited for the NBA season to start.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I mean, as I guess I'm a Knicks fan. I'm not really proud of that, but I'm just going to be watching the Sixers fans crumble around me, which will be fun for the next couple of weeks.
Can't see Nico is shaking his head. He's distraught.
I'm shaking my head, but I don't know. I think it's going to be good. I'm hoping the MLB gets back on track. I want to watch the Yankees again, like I started the episode with. But yeah, I mean, I love basketball. I'm super excited for the season to kick off again. I'm excited to see how the LeBron revenge tour continues to progress. But yeah, it's a lot of good stuff happening in sports. Hopefully it stays on track, knock on wood.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. We're signing off.